Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's having a great Army Day. Welcome to AUSA Now and the Association of the United States Army 66th Annual Meeting. I am Lieutenant General David D. Halverson, retired, and I am a soldier for life. It's great to be moderating this super panel today as we address one of the most important things that we've talked about is our people. Our forum is entitled Operationalizing the Army People Strategy. It is one of the 8 AUSA contemporary military forums. AUSA continues to amplify the great message that our Army needs and to be the voice of our soldiers. So today, we have assembled just a tremendous panel who are the architects of the Army's People Strategy. And we are very blessed that each of the members would join us today to give us their initial thoughts on what they did and what their accountability is to the strategy, and then how they will implement it. We will kick off the forum today with General Paul Funk, the Commanding General of TRADOC, providing open remarks, and then each panel member will give a few minutes of their remarks. We'll close that out, and then we'll have questions and answers from the crowd. So everyone that's viewing us right now, please send in your questions so we can have a very fruitful and good discussion on this most important topic. So General Funk, sir, it's great to have you here with us today, and we want you to kick off the panel with your open remarks. So, sir?
Well, thanks, General Halverson. It's great to see you, my friend. You guys are in for a big treat. We've got General Lonnie Hibbard, we've got General Jim Rainey, we've got Miss Stephanie Miller, and batting cleanup today is Dr. Casey Wardensky, and we're going to talk to you about what the Army People Strategy can do, is doing, and how we're implementing it across the board. So I'd like to thank all the panel members for joining us. As you all know, our greatest asset is our people. And so TRADOC, in conjunction with MNRA and all of the rest of the Department of Defense and the people business, is transforming soldiers into leaders through the Army People Strategy. How we do that and using our initiatives is through the TRADOC campaign plan. And you can see it here on the slide in front of us. What it talks about is inform, acquire, improve, build, and reform, and all of those are related to how and when and where we are going to improve our great people that give us the asymmetric advantage. Included in this, and Combined Arms Training, our Combined Arms Center, General Rainey and his team of all the COEs drive change and develop leaders, and they develop leaders of character. So I want you to all to sit back and understand where we're coming at from this program. Several of the initiatives we'll talk to you today are already in place and already moving forward. It is our greatest intent to make sure that you understand that we are in the leader development business, and that business is going to be fruitful, and it's going to maintain our asymmetric advantage across the globe. Let me go to the next slide and just give you a little primer of what I think, how we go through this. So I think this is all about be, know, do. I think you want to be the leader that you want to be led by. And that means character, confidence, commitment, and candor. And you've heard the chief and the SMA and the secretary talk about know your squad. And this is my squad, who's in it, what they do, their competence, who the heck they are as people, and why it is they serve. And then we've got to orient on the bedrock of our great profession and lead our great profession through our Army values. And that's doing the right things the right way. This is about our commitment to character, our commitment to developing the leaders of tomorrow. I think the Army People Strategy has revolutionized and will continue to revolutionize the development of our soldiers, their leaders, and they will be the part of where we're going through. So TRADOC is in the people business. We are, in fact, trying to lead our Army towards higher levels of expertise, professionalism, and developing leaders of character. So with that being said, I think I'll pass it on to Ms. Miller now if she is up, and then we'll go from there. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks, sir. Ms. Miller, are you up? If not, sir, we'll probably go to Jim Rainey. Jim Rainey, could you begin, and we'll bring Stephanie in when she gets on. Oh, wait, I guess she is. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Yes, good morning. Are you able to hear me? Great. Okay. I think we may have figured out our technical challenges here. So I want to say thank you so much for having me as part of the panel. It's an honor to be with my distinguished colleagues and have an opportunity to talk to you about what accession policy at the OSD level is doing to support the Army People strategy. Many of you may be wondering exactly what is the Office of Accession Policy. Well, our office establishes the DoD policies and processes governing accessions for both officer and enlisted recruits, from marketing and advertising, medical qualification standards, testing batteries, security screening, and our service academies and ROTC programs. And we put these practices and policies into place at our DoD Medical Evaluation Board and at our military entrance processing stations throughout the country. One of the department's greatest challenges is growing propensity, defined as an interest in serving in the military among American youth and support for that service by their influencers. A combination of factors such as the shrinking military footprint, improving economy, and years of prolonged overseas conflict have negatively influenced today's recruiting market. These factors have created conditions in which the intrinsically motivating elements of military service have become far less self-evident to the recruit market, while the sacrifices in terms of physical, psychological, and quality of life consequences often remain at the top of their mind. Today's youth view the military as fraught with risk and sacrifice without the unique rewards and advantages. The distinguishing outcomes youth associated with the military often include physical injury, constant deployment, family separation, post-service unemployment, and trouble reintegrating into society. These views are often reinforced by media, national headlines, and oftentimes family influence. To counter these challenges and help re-image the military to today's youth, we have capitalized on the service's recruiting efforts by initiating an influencer and youth integrated media campaign developed by the department's Joint Advertising Market Research and Studies program. Launched in 2018, the media campaign continues to address public misperceptions, increasing awareness of the opportunities of military service, advocating the benefits of public service, and attempting to overcome the misinformation of the risks associated with service. You may have seen these ads in your own television viewing or social media activity. They begin with a glimpse into the future of a young adult serving in the military, and then his or her parent appears in the ad. The ad encourages discussion between the youth and the influencers about the benefits and pride associated with military service. The ad ends with the young adult asking the parent, "What do you think?" and shows the adult receptive to further discussion with the tagline, "Their success tomorrow begins with your support today." The influencer campaign dovetails well with our youth campaign entitled, "You Have a Calling, We Have an Answer," and similarly shows the passion and interest that drive American youth can translate into a job in the military, showing a young man or woman in uniform and then in civilian clothes pursuing those vocations. We are pleased with the results of these campaigns so far. Our data shows that influencers who saw the ads were more likely to recommend service than those who did not. And since its launch, the campaign has driven approximately 4 million visitors to todaysmilitary.com, 320 million video views via digital platforms, and more than 250,000 visitors linked off the todaymilitary.com website to a service recruiting site to get more information about a particular service. Through the department's mixed media campaign and the service's outstanding recruiting efforts to include the Army's own innovative initiatives, we have been successful in motivating approximately 475,000 applicants a year to initiate the accession process. The next step is to assess those applicants against our standards of excellence for roughly 250,000 final recruits that ship off to boot camp each year. And that assessment process to determine who is qualified is in and of itself undergoing a significant transformation. In the accession process, we continuously strive to ensure applicants are physically and psychologically qualified and capable of performing strenuous military duties, often associated with wartime activities. In doing so, we ensure that the accession of new recruits are 1, able to meet the mission requirements of the force, 2, increase the likelihood of a successful first term of enlistment, 3, decrease the likelihood of aggravating any pre-existing conditions, and 4, ultimately minimize attrition loss. The current process largely relies on applicant self-reported information, which on average results in about a 50% attrition rate from initial military training, directly attributable to pre-existing health conditions, many of which are mental and behavioral health related. In nearly half those cases, the applicant was aware of the condition but failed to disclose it. 50% is unacceptable. Really, any percentage is unacceptable. In an effort to mitigate this challenge and recruit upwards towards $1 billion in attrition avoidance, Congress and the GAO directed the department to implement greater access to verifiable medical information. While we will continue to rely on an applicant's self-disclosure of their medical history, we will also leverage a suite of databases to emplace that old adage and one of General Funk's most important fundamentals: trust but verify. Accession policy, along with the United States Military Entrance Processing Command, has several initiatives to gain further transparency into the medical history of our recruits. In the next 2 years, we will incorporate direct access to medical records, prescription drug records, and we will build the department's electronic health record system, MHS Genesis, directly into the accession process. For example, the prescription medication reporting system will allow DoD to use all applicants' prescription history to identify possible conditions by accessing health information exchanges maintained at the state level. Information from the National Prescription Database will act as a quick tipper on medications that the applicant has recently taken. Coupled with the Joint Legacy Viewer, which provides the same information for prior service and dependent records, these sources of electronic medical information will greatly improve our ability to gain access to patient history to support an informed medical qualification determination. MHS Genesis will not only build a recruit's new DoD electronic health record, becoming the cradle in the cradle-to-grave concept for record sharing across DoD and the VA, but it will also incorporate new data analytic capabilities, allowing us to compare screening data across all military entrance processing stations. We'll have a higher fidelity of pre-existing conditions, disqualifying factors, and consult records, all of which will provide our service medical waiver authorities more information on which to assess risk and make informed waiver decisions. Ultimately, this information will also be used to reassess our existing medical standards and make data-driven decisions regarding potential changes. The combination of these medical data repositories enable fair and broad access to authoritative sources of medical information to reduce our reliance on self-disclosure and make more informed qualification and waiver decisions for all applicants. Much in the way that we leverage advanced technology to field our media campaigns and tailor them to meet the future needs of applicants and influencers, so too are we bringing our accession enterprise into the next generation of data analytics and decision making, all of which directly supports the tenets of the Army People Strategy: readiness, modernization, and reform, to deliver the right people in the right place at the right time to deploy, fight, and win, and give us a distinct advantage.
Thanks, ma'am. I appreciate it. And Jim Rainey?
Sir, it's Jim. You hear me okay?
Got you loud and clear, sir.
Hey, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jim Rainey, the commander of the Combined Arms Center, and more importantly, the TRADOC Deputy Commander for Training and Leader Development. So I'm going to talk a little bit about leader development today before we go to questions. So I'm sure everybody was paying attention yesterday. The senior leaders of the Army staked out people as our number one priority. The chief talked about people as our greatest strength, our most valuable asset, and our most important weapon system. So clear guidance from senior leaders for the Army. If you think about war fighting, I think we'd all agree that war is simplest form is a contest of wills between humans, right? Technology is important. Men and women in the U.S. Army deserve the very best our country can provide. but ultimately it's a contest of will between humans. So we got clear guidance, we got a compelling reason to make people our priority when it comes to winning wars and protecting our great country. So the challenge for us is how do we operationalize that? General Funk mentioned that earlier. That's his mission as a people commander. Our job out here at CAC and at the COEs is to build leaders and drive change. So in the leader development space, we're attacking that, how do you turn words into action, right? How do you operationalize the great people strategy we got? So we're really working on three big things that I'd be glad to talk more about in the question and answer. Number one, re-emphasizing the profession, right? We all know that we're members of a profession. We don't have jobs. We don't work at the Army. We are the Army. So driving that back into our force as a mitigation against some of the challenges we're facing, but most importantly, to maintain the critical trust of the American public and the civilian leadership we have that we need to be the greatest Army in the world. We're re-emphasizing the thing we call how-to leader development. Everybody knows leader development is important. Everybody knows it's a responsibility of every leader in the Army to make those around them better. But we got to get back to the no kidding how to we do that. The nuts and bolts of that hard, critical work that we all do as leaders. And then last is driving career-long assessments in support of the Army Talent Management Task Force and the Chief's effort to prioritize acquiring and retaining the very best leaders that our soldiers deserve. We're implementing assessments at echelon across all four cohorts. So we're starting with the officer cohort this year, and we'll add our great NCOs, warrant officers, and civilians as we move into FY21. All of that in support of improving people's ability to be self-aware so they can do better self-development and helping leaders jumpstart their leader development programs and be more proficient at that. So those are our big three examples right now of what we're doing to operationalize the people strategy. I look forward to your questions. Thank you very much.
Sir, I really appreciate it. And we're lucky to have Lonnie Hibbard on. He's the commanding general of the initial military training. So Lonnie, give us your thoughts.
General Halvorsen, thank you very much. And I'd like to thank Dr. Wadinsky and General Funk for the opportunity to tell the force about holistic health and fitness. The holistic health and fitness, or as we call it, H2F system, is the Army's continued commitment to its people and the Army's primary investment in soldier readiness and lethality. While leading the cultural change in Army fitness, H2F is one of the four main components that helps us conceptualize the whole person concept and soldier development. Why is the Army making this commitment to soldier readiness and the long-term health? Well, if you look at the number of active duty soldiers who are medically non-deployable, that equates to being about 9 brigade combat teams short. If we can reduce these non-availability rates for soldiers by just 1%, that will save more than $40 million, which is critical in this fiscal environment. We have to stop breaking soldiers. Instead, we must work to prevent these injuries and preserve the long-term health of our most valuable resource. In Army aviation, we track downtime for our aircraft in hours. We measure downtime for our soldiers in weeks and months. It can take weeks for a referral to see the necessary specialist, and we use limited duty profiles to mitigate that time. For the Apache, we did daily inspections and rigorous routine scheduled maintenance to prevent our aircraft from becoming non-mission capable. For soldiers, the annual periodic health evaluation is helpful, but it doesn't provide a routine, hands-on preventative approach to health and wellness. H2F is that readiness system that combines all aspects of human performance under a single governance to empower commanders to improve soldier health and fitness. We're bringing soldier physical readiness training and other essential aspects of health like sleep, nutrition, behavioral, and spiritual health under one cohesive system. This way, the individual and commanders achieve better health outcomes for the whole of a soldier's career. From the day they enter the Army until the day they leave, we will care for the whole person. With the H2F system in place, commanders will have a single structure to address soldier health and wellness. The H2F performance team includes physical therapists, registered dietitians, occupational therapists, cognitive enhancement specialists, athletic trainers, and strength and conditioning coaches at the brigade level, who work in tandem with the resource sources such as chaplains, medical and behavioral health teams that already exist in the brigades. In close coordination with the chain of command, these teams will execute a holistic approach to injury prevention, soldier performance enhancement, and if a soldier is injured, a quicker return to duty. Imagine the system like a professional sports team. Everyone's goal is to maximize the team's performance by taking care of the individual and monitoring and enabling his or her total health. Most importantly, preventing injuries to ensure everyone is ready to play both the home and away games. Our Army National Guard and Army Reserve teams are also working to resource H2F by implementing creative solutions and pilot programs as we work to solve their unique challenges. Regardless of the compo, H2F's guiding principle, essential to its success, is it must be a leader-driven program for the total Army. Commanders are responsible for its success. For this effort to be successful, we will train leaders through embedding H2F in professional military education at all levels. We replaced the FM 722 physical readiness training with FM 722 holistic health and fitness to begin educating the force on what H2F is and how it works. This new field manual, already available along with its Army training publications, serves as the doctrine for the H2F system. We owe it to the men and women of the Army to provide them with the necessary tools and training needed to fight and win our nation's war while preventing injuries and protecting the whole soldier. So thank you for allowing me to do my introduction, and I look forward to your questions.
Thanks, Lonnie. In batting cleanup, as you would say, being a great team, as we're very fortunate to have the Assistant Secretary for Manpower and Reserve Affairs, the Honorable Dr. Wardinsky. Sir, thanks for joining us today.
Pleasure to be here. This is a really important panel because it's talking about a very important set of activities. Last October, we published under the Chief and Secretary signatures, the Army's first ever people strategy. We spent, in collaboration with TRADOC, West Point, and other Army headquarters, the past year building about 4 or 5 key implementing plans that are now taking form and are being translated into campaign plans at TRADOC. What we're talking about today is the how of the people strategy. And you can see it in just a few of the aspects that we're covering here. The very detailed work that goes on to transform the way we approach people in the Army. I'd say this is probably the most substantive change in 100 years. The Army we had was a terrific Army. It met the needs of the nation during an era that was from World War I to probably the end of the 90s. It was characterized by industrial activities. We're very much in information and conceptual age today. Our leaders are conceiving of new formations, new operating paradigms. They're leveraging information to bring these to fruition and to create a pace of operations and agility organizationally that our enemies simply won't be able to match. But the key enabler to doing all that will be our people. And the focus on our people is moved from things that were big aggregates, rank, branch, things like that, to things that are very granular and speak to things that are perhaps uniquely American and perhaps Western, in that speaks to the value of the individual, the human dignity, what people bring to bear in solving problems. Those are very much embedded in American culture, and we're leveraging that American culture today in the Army to bring that kind of agility to bear to put the right person in the right place at the right time. And from the programs General Hibbard talked about, taking care of those folks physically, spiritually, mentally, that Stephanie talked about, to make sure at the front end we've got the right folks joining our formation. And then, of course, as General Rainey talked about, developing our folks and key tasks in terms of building the right leaders, which are imperative to building the agility we seek. So over the last year, a great deal happened. We went from a 15-page, highly conceptual document that laid out governance structure, identified outcomes we seek, which are cohesive teams that can allow our forces to win in any environment, building on Army culture, putting key enablers to work, technology, authorities, resources, against a background of quality of life that helps us sustain and retain a high-quality workforce, civilian and military, Guard and Reserve. All that is now being implemented. As of this month, General Funk and I signed the implementing plan for the military side of the equation. In June, I signed the civilian implementing plan. General Funk and his team here are talking about key elements of the campaign plan at TRADOC to operationalize these implementing plans that put the how into the why, the where, the what, and the who. And so in rapid order, our folks in the Army will be seeing a much different approach that will make it much easier for them to put themselves in the right place, right time, to put their passions to work and put their talents to work in support of their country and defense of this great nation of ours.
Hey, sir, thanks for really tying that all together about the who, what, when, where, and why. Really important, especially as we take care of our people and what has changed, and really a great synopsis of everything and those timelines. At this time, within the panel members, does anyone want to say anything, reference anyone else, other panel members' comments? General Funk?
You know, I think the last thing I'd do is let me just before we go to questions is let me bring up my last slide here. You know, I think we got to take this personally. We in the leadership division, we have to in the developing leaders business have to bring up and talk about this is my squad. We've got to understand, and if I bring up that slide, what you'll see is. My squad. And I think we got to take this personally out there in the force. We got to drive change. And the only way to do that is starting at the building block levels. You see what, if you look at my slide, that's me in the middle. That is my squad right there. And that's how it's developed. You've heard the chief talk about the golden triangle. I'm trying to personalize this and operationalize this so that we all understand what it means. And then you look at those things that break trust and harm our troopers, and those corrosives that we talk about at the bottom of the middle of the slide in red there. We've got to drive this out of force. So as we develop our leaders of character, they need to understand clearly that this is the personal business. The Army's about people. The Army is people, and that's what this means. Okay, let's go back to you there, General Halverson, and let's go to questions.
Hey, thanks, sir. I mean, I'm telling you, it is an affair of the heart, and really blessed to you emphasize that. Our first question is for General Rainey. You when you talk about the how-to and leader development, can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, hey, sure. Thanks. I appreciate that great question, and just for the audience out there, so then Colonel Halverson and Major Rainey bumped into each other about '99. And I have benefited from him putting time and energy into me personally to make me a better leader. And that's the one thing I'll tell everybody that I feel passionately about is, people are the priority for everything General Funk just said. They're also our legacy. So the leaders you build in the Army are the legacy you leave in the Army. That's one of many reasons why being great at leader development is something that's important. So, sir, to answer that, I like to ask a question to people when I'm talking to younger leaders. If I ask somebody what makes a great leader, almost everybody has an answer. It comes, rolls off the tip of their tongue. Selfless, competent, leads by example. But what I've found is when you flip that a little bit and you say, how do we make great leaders, or how to make great leaders? People struggle with that, honestly. The putting the time and energy and deliberate planning into no kidding leader development plans and programs at echelon takes a lot of hard work. It starts with actions on the objective. What do we want the leader to be able to do? Knowledge, skills, and behaviors. The be, know, do piece that General Funk described. Then you have to do an assessment of your people to know where they're at. And when you know where you're starting and you know where you're going, then you can put the hard work in. Just like anything else that's important in the Army, it takes resources, it takes time, it takes leader energy. The good news is we got a bunch of great Army doctrine on this topic. We got a bunch of tools that are available in the TRADOC website, CAC website. The Center for the Army Profession and Leadership has tools that are available. But that's basically what I'm talking about when I use the term how-to leader development. Over.
Yeah, thanks, sir. That really helps clarify things, and appreciate all your leadership that you're doing there at CAC. It's so important. Major General Hibbard, what are the other components of the whole soldier concept? Obviously, for the basic combat training and things that you're doing there, it's really important for you to ensure because it's a very high risk area. It was when I was in TRADOC, a very high risk area. What are you doing to assist the whole soldier concept?
Sir, thank you for the question. As we look at the whole soldier, it's an idea that as we look at what H2F is, and I talked about that's one component as we look at how to build a whole soldier. And so as we look at some of the other areas, we're looking at, how do we link holistic health and fitness with the social intelligence to develop a trusted Army professional who thrives in a complex, diverse environment, and really building trust and driving out those corrosives that General Funk mentioned as we look at the social intelligence aspect. And then General Rainey's team is how is that linked to the cognitive dominance as we develop the intellectual diversity and capacity to succeed in the environments through not only initial military training when it starts with in my footprint, but really moves into the PME and the functional training, as well as the leader development in General Rainey's area there, and that linkage. And then how does that actually tie to the quality of life when we look at the whole soldier in developing a safe and stable and even nurturing environment for the soldier and their family? Because if we get all four of those pieces correct, we can build that whole soldier that will want to be a soldier for life, not only doing a career, but being an advocate and really getting after some of those corrosives and building that trust with the soldier and his family. If that answered your question, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Lonnie. I do appreciate it. Honorable Dr. Wadinsky, when I look at your bio and stuff, it seems like you're made for this position and stuff with all the investment you've had with leadership, not only for as a cadet, but building into the time when, I'm not sure, building the time into your written efforts and stuff. What do you see as a risk right now or in implementing your Army people strategy, if there is? Over.
Well, of course, there's always risk because this is a major change. I think all the leaders involved see it as pivotal to the future, but also pivot from the past. There was certainly nothing wrong with the Army we had. It did a great job in its time. Times have changed. And I think, maybe our concern would be that the resources in terms of leadership time, in terms of time to implement, bringing on the key technologies, that we've got to compress all this change to get that done in a time frame that's relevant, so we can get on to the next thing. We're busy here doing fundamental things, but they fundamentally reach into the culture. And if it takes us too long, our younger folks may not actually invest the effort in helping us complete the task. So I think speed is of the essence here, and getting on with things and wrapping them up. And having people see the benefit of what we're talking about is probably the most important piece of this.
Thanks, sir. General Funk, are you getting feedback, or are you getting fratricide, or is it just me with my system?
No, I'm hearing the same thing. I just heard the Sergeant Major of our Army talking about the Army people.
Well, what I'd like to do is make sure our folks in the background kind of silence that or get it into the next room. But sir, we got to fight through the fog of war, just like you said. It's a personal affair of the heart. And could you tell us what you're trying to do, in working through the COVID environment, and it hasn't had any challenges with implementing the people strategy? Over.
Yeah. First of all, attacking the COVID environment is just like any other mission, Dave. And frankly, I'm incredibly proud of TRADOC and how it responded to this. what we were able to do is take advantage of a bit of time that the chief got us, about 2 weeks, to set the medical conditions and our ability to overcome the environment. But we never stopped training. We actually continued the training. And what we did was slow the assessment of people, sessions of people, until we could set the medical conditions, thicken the medical response force, and figure out how much footage we had. So we had to do some social distancing and things like that. And frankly, General Hibbard was masterful in how he put that plan together. And if you don't know Beagle down at Fort Jackson, or any of our great Army Training Center commanders, they were magnificent. They built this airplane at flight, and have really for the nation, and how they dealt with first establishing the bubble and then continuing to train our great Army to provide the force that they need. I'll leave it at that now that I think the background noise is out, and go back to you, Dave.
Thanks, sir. Now I feel what it's like to communicate to the newer generation to make sure you can listen to the fog of war. But I do appreciate it because the message is so important. You know, Ms. Miller, you really hit on a huge thing of overlook. When I did my thesis at Naval Postgrad, it was actually on the recruiting aspect of the high propensity. And I remember going to Fort Sheridan at the time. But looking at the new recruits and how we get out of the family business and how we sustain this all volunteer force, can you give us some insights and really what's your how do you encourage these people, and how do you get the parents to sign up for United States Army and for the commitment they need for our nation? Over.
No, that I appreciate the question. Certainly, that is what the whole department, and to include the Army, has been focused on over the last several years. Is how do we try to better educate young people and their parents about the opportunities within military service for skill development, leadership development, quality of life, education. What we've seen in our data is that at the same time that many of the benefits of military service are increasing in terms of either the dollars and cents that people can get out of the experience and the access to education, that while many of those benefits, the value of those benefits have been increasing, the public perception of the value of those benefits have been decreasing. And so it's a difficult job that we have to, within a 30-second spot or a billboard ad or a 20-second radio spot or a social media ad, that we're lucky if we get someone to look at for 3 seconds or more, to try to address their misinformation, to educate them about the reality and the benefit of service, and then try to move them to the point where they would be willing to have a conversation with a recruiter. And that's difficult to do, particularly when the market is so saturated with content, and when influencers and youth can tailor the content so that they really only see what they're interested in seeing. Think of your own Netflix or Amazon Prime streaming accounts. You don't see commercials for the military, really commercials for any product placement within those streaming platforms. And so one of the things that we have asked from Congress, and I think they were particularly receptive to in the COVID landscape, is taking a look at the authorities that govern what we can do in terms of media advertising, social media engagement, the type of information that we're collecting to tailor content to something that might be really interesting to an individual. A lot of the authorities that we have right now are based upon kind of telephone directory information, and that's just not sufficient any longer to be able to operate in a more dynamic space. So our partners across the aisle in Congress have been receptive to exploring opportunities to expand those authorities such that we can leverage some of the capabilities that the commercial industry uses every day. But we also have to be thoughtful about how we do that, because while folks may not be concerned about Nike selling them a pair of shoes every time they open up their email or every time they go to Facebook or YouTube or Instagram. They may have a very different visceral response when it's talking about military service or public service, and they might internalize it in a different way. So together with all the services and their marketing and advertising agencies, we are trying to make sure, one, that we get those authorities, and two, that we're very responsible in how we use them.
Thanks, ma'am. That was very enlightening. I appreciate it. Well, good news that we did get rid of our background music, and I would like to really thank everyone. One of the things I would want to, I think we have a time for one more question. I'll turn it over to General Funk and Dr. Wodinsky for closing comments. But this is for General Rainey. Sir, professional military education. Do you consider PME to be education or training?
Thanks, sir. I guess I get the hard question. Yeah, we get that a lot, General Funk and I both. And not to be flippant, but I think the answer is yes. It is absolutely both, sir. So the guidance we operate in the Army and the TRADOC and CAC side is that you got to train for the known and educate for the unknown. So the stuff we know we're going to have to do, we're the best training organization in the history of the military. And that's, building leaders and world-class training is what makes us the greatest Army. So we got to train people for what we know we're going to have to do. As we move from largely coin operations to large-scale combat operations at echelon across the cohorts, there's some stuff we got to get back to the good Army training ethic on. But the power of PME and the power of a all-volunteer force that's fighting for something they genuinely believe in is it gives us opportunity to leverage the fact that our leaders and especially our soldiers are smart. So teaching them how to think versus what to think is the way we prepare them for what we all know is going to happen. No matter how right we get the next war, there's going to be complexity, uncertainty, good enemies going to adapt, and our men and women in leadership positions are going to have to solve problems at the speed of combat. So there's a large part of that involves world-class quality education. The good news for everybody out there that's coming through, any TRADOC school, any Army PME, is that we're world-class at both, and we balance it. And I think we got it right now, and both are absolutely essential. Thanks, sir.
Hey, thanks, Jim. It is great. I'll tell you, it's been just an honor to be here and fight through some of this friction and fog, but really to hear the true context, because we are at an inflection point. And that inflection point really is just like we grew the all-volunteer force. And it's good to see that we have a Army people strategy and enablers from OSD and leadership that are working to keep things at the human dimension aspect of it. And I'll turn it over to General Funk and Dr. Wodinsky for just closing comments. General Funk?
Hey, thanks, Dave, and thanks to all the panel members out there. I really appreciate it. And Jim, thanks for taking that hard question. I appreciate that. So here's what I think. Our culture must be focused on an agile, informed, diverse, and inclusive team of Army professionals, constantly advancing our Army's ability to deploy, fight, and win our nation's wars. The team that our nation trusts to provide our soldiers with exceptional training and education quality products. And finally, we've got to be excellent leaders of character. We've got to be a team of teams. And as Dave said, if you're at an inflection point, you fall back on your bedrock, which is the culture of being Army professionals and focused on the profession of arms, where we lead the world. Over to you, Dr. Wodinsky. Thank you again.
Hey, thank you, General Funk and team. Hey, it was a great pleasure to be part of this. If I could leave, our folks listening in with just a thought. General Funk hit a key word, which is part of our culture, and that's the word trust. I'd say up till about 2-3 years ago, the Army was really in a position of asking its units and its folks to trust that Big Army knew best. We distributed talent to the Army through Human Resources Command. That kind of was based on assumption that Big Army knew best. Units could trust that the Big Army knew what they needed and when they needed it and what to send them. And our folks were sort of expected to trust that the Big Army knew how to build their career and how to fit their expectations best. And that was based on a couple ideas. One was data was very expensive and hard to come by in the old days. Information was very tough to come by as well. That's not the case any longer. Information is cheap. It's readily available to all of us. And so that lets us to flip the trust paradigm. And now what we see is the Army trusts its units to know best what their mission is, what their gaps are, what talent they need to add to their formations to strengthen their teams. And the Army now trusts its individuals to know best how their preferences for where they'd like to see their careers go meld with the needs of the Army and the goals of the units that they're going to fit into, and that they can express their talents in ways that will be relevant to our units so that they can put themselves in the right place at the right time. So trust is a vital ingredient. The availability of information and data lets us sort of flip the paradigm. And I really look forward to the future. This is going to be a great place, as it always has been, to work, but the agility is just going to be terrific going forward. So thank you for watching, and thanks for listening to us.
Thanks, sir. And thanks very much for our great panelists and for everyone out there. We appreciate the time is now. People first, winning matters.